Hi, everyone. Happy afternoon. It is a great joy and delight to be with two women business leaders whom I deeply respect, look up to, admire, learn from. They have great hearts and are so strong and persevering, both of you. Rose Marcario, right here to my left, is the president and CEO of Patagonia. She joined in 2008 as COO and CFO. Patagonia was named in Fast Company's top 10 innovative companies in the world for its work in regenerative agriculture, activism, and green supply chain innovation. Under her leadership, she's deepened Patagonia's commitment to environmental activism and championed the Benefit Corporation, the BCorp movement, and the idea that business should be a force for good. Also here with me is Eileen Fisher, the founder and chairwoman of her namesake brand, Eileen Fisher. The design company has created effortless clothing for over 34 years and is a pioneer in sustainability and empowering women and girls. Eileen Fisher is one of the largest women's fashion companies to be a certified B Corp. And later in this session, we'll be talking some about why being a B Corp is so important to both Rose and Eileen. To begin, I think as many of us know, the apparel industry is known for being one of the dirtiest industries. It's known for being a huge polluter of the environment. Yet both of these companies, Patagonia and Eileen Fisher, are very committed to cleaning up their supply chain and doing what they can to not be part of the problem, but to actually be part of the solution. And we're going to begin by hearing from both Rose and Eileen about some of the innovative moves they've made in the leadership of their respective organizations to that end. And we'll start with Rose.
Great. It's great to be here with my friends, Tami and Eileen. Yeah, so I'm going to talk just for a couple of minutes about some of the challenges. And I think this is not the sexy part of building product, but supply chains are everything. And they're a big part of what Tami was talking about in terms of like the impact that the environmental impact it's having. And I think most customers don't realize that they are making a vote with their dollars every time they purchase something, and just how powerful that vote is. This is a fair trade factory. We were one of the first big apparel brands to actually go in use fair trade as a mechanism to get more premiums to workers. This is actually a photograph of a child care center that was built with the fair trade premiums. The workers decide what happens with the premiums, and they wanted to build a child care center. And I think it's a great representation of like fair trade is a step in the journey of everything that we need to do in order to make it more fair for workers. And I like this picture because it's showing a recycled down supply chain. And it's very manual work to create these new supply chains. But we're using the resources. If everyone were to consume at the rate that the US consumes, we'd be using the resources of 4 planets. And that's a reality that we all have to come to grips with. This isn't an endless supply of water and fossil fuel and synthetic fabrics. And we can't have virgin supply chains for the rest of our lives. It's just not going to happen with the rate of consumption. So this, I think, is a recycled down supply chain, but it just goes to show you like the manual intensity of building some of these supply chains. I like it as a photo. Our customers have a contract with us when they buy product from us, and part of that is getting their product repaired if it's broken or needs fixing. And we've been studying supply chains for 30 years, and the most important thing that you can do in terms of environmental impact is to keep your stuff longer. And these centers our global centers around the world repair about 60,000 units a year. They do great work. And people like to keep their gear. It's part of their adventures and part of their life, and they enjoy it. So We also will stand up for what we believe in. We've been giving to grassroots activism to protect air, water, and soil and conserve wild places for more than 30 years. And this was part of a campaign we ran last year, and we'll continue to do that. I think it's part of our customer proposition, and I think it's part of what it means to be a brand. I mean, you have to stand for something. This is just a really cool picture of a dog on a car, which I like. But it's also, this year we also started our wornwear.com site, which is where customers can buy used gear if they'd like. And I think a big part of, this is a big movement now, you know, apparel companies need to take responsibility for their product from end to end. And that means having a life for it when it's done with use, or recycling it or reusing it. And this program's been really successful for us, and it brings us a whole new customer, and it's a whole idea around re-commerce. And I think most brands, if they're not paying attention to this, will probably not be around in the next 10 or 15 years, in my view. And then this is something new we did this year that hopefully will help inform the conversation a little bit, which is just connect our customers locally with the environmental grantees. These are the groups that are protecting air, water, and soil, or public lands in their local communities. Because one of the biggest things that we heard, especially after the elections, is what can we do to work in our own community around environmental issues? So that encapsulates some of the things we've been working on. I'm going to pass it over to you, Eileen.
Thanks, Rose. Great. Oh, do I?
And I'm wearing your shirt today.
Thank you. Beautiful. That color's amazing on you. Thank you. Wonderful. Great. This is for clicking for slides?
Yeah, just click there.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Okay. So, thank you. Thanks, Tami. Thanks, Rose. This is fun to be here. Good to see all of you. So what we do is we have been designing clothes for 35 years, and the basic concept originally was timeless, simple clothing that is good quality materials, that lasts a long time, that hopefully doesn't go out of fashion, so that you want to do what Rose said, buy what you love and live with it longer, we say. So, so the way we look at, and Rose was talking about end-to-end with the manufacturing, we start by looking at everything, starting with seeds, farmers, animals, fibers, dye houses, everything. And we look at trying to green all of our materials. 4 years ago or so, we committed to what we call Vision 2020, which was that we wanted to be a 100% sustainable company, which is a huge, impossible dream. And there are places where it just doesn't happen. Things like transportation. Anyway, we can go into challenges, but until there are sailboats that can really go quickly across the ocean, or manufacturing in this country, we're still struggling with transportation. And so we do things like offsets. So it's a little bit of a cheat, but at least we try to cover our costs by buying wind energy. So anyway, I want to just say one other thing. So because we think of it as circular, we think of it as whole, we think we're responsible from start to finish, we started a take-back program 8 years ago. And that program is also what Patagonia is doing. We take back the clothes, we clean them, and we resell them. And it's another whole little business. And what ended up happening after years of doing this is that we had mountains and warehouses full of clothes that we didn't want to put in the landfill, that we were committed to figuring out what to do with. So we started this tiny factory. And we are remaking, upcycling these clothes that we couldn't sell. So, it's a really creative process. Like, you can play with things that you can't sell, things that are left over because they have stains or whatever. And so you can cut up cashmere and, linen and silk, things that you'd treat very preciously. But you can play. And so what ended up happening is we started playing. And actually my very first employee, Siggy, found this felting machine and started running the recycled clothes through the felting machine and created these most amazing things. So I guess I'm going to show that project, and I just want to say that it's so exciting to see what happens when you have a problem and you dive into it, and then really creative and interesting solutions happen. So this is the thing okay, so here's showing what normally happens with the clothes. So our second largest export from this country is used clothing. So we ship to Africa and probably South America and lots of other places. Now many countries in Africa are saying no more of your stuff, and because of it's ruining the craft industries and things like that. So. And it's also ending up in their landfill, what they can't sell. So we tried to demonstrate this with this exhibit. This was in Milan at the design show. And so we showed how the clothes are shipped in crates. And then we showed what we were doing with the clothes that was left, that were left. So so people coming in to see and experience the sense of, oh my God, what is this? This is the waste that we create. But what's so interesting is that you can actually make it into art. It's just incredible. And for us, because we start with beautiful fabrics, it was just too painful to think of throwing them away. And so to make them into like these wall pieces that we're selling, actually, that are like actually a little bit pricey, which is great, because it's really just, it's like art from trash, And so pillows we're making, we're making some clothes. Let's see, there's another piece, it's just incredible. And here you can see up close, it's very magical what happens, and there's no glue, there's no water used in this. It's just a machine that does use energy, but it just punches the fabric together. And so, you can mix fibers. It's a really interesting upcycle idea. And let's see, what's the last one? Oh, just to show you now some of the products that we're making and all the possibilities. So I guess I just like to say, I've always said this from the very beginning when we have a problem, that we dive in and try to figure out, be really creative and figure out what we can do. And out of it, comes the maybe secret to the next success, or problems become possibilities. So we think, people have been saying, you could double your business without making any more clothes just by taking your old clothes back and remaking them. So we don't know if that's true yet, but we have a lot of excitement around this project, so we'll see. So anyway, that's a start.
Wonderful, thank you both. I'd love to start our conversation by getting an education from both of you about fabrics and what fabrics you consider to be green and which ones you just wouldn't touch or wouldn't work with. And I'd especially be interested from a consumer guide standpoint. I know when I was getting dressed this morning, and I wasn't quite sure what to wear. And I was like, my shoes have some patent leather on it. That's probably not going to work. And then I looked at all the rest of my shoes, and I was like, I don't know if my hemp sandals, go with what I'm wearing. I felt confused.
Yeah.
So obviously, by Eileen Fisher, by Patagonia. But beyond that, when we look at labels, what's a good consumer guide to be looking for?
Oh, my God.
Well, I'll tell you the couple that I know are, just crystal clear. One is organic cotton versus chemical cotton.
Right.
There's no question about that. The amount of pesticides used in, chemical cotton agriculture are some of the worst polluting chemicals in the world. And so that's a pretty straightforward one. We're now looking at, can we grow cotton regeneratively and actually sequester more carbon and have better retention of water in the soil and things like that. We've done life cycle analysis on synthetics. Synthetics tend to last longer. So you have a durability versus potentially, especially for the things that our folks do. So, I think it's, every product and fiber causes some level of harm or has some input. But I'd say cotton versus chemical is without question. I think any kind of animal product like wool in a sustainable ecosystem is important. And I don't, hemp is a great fabric because it uses very little any kind of pesticides or insecticides. So hemp is a good overall industrialized hemp is a great product as well. And in terms of fabrics, I don't know, what would you say, Eileen?
Yeah.
More of a designer than
well, we're kind of in different worlds, and I struggle with this because we pretty much try not to do synthetics.
Yeah.
So I always felt that synthetics don't break down in the environment. So maybe they last longer. But if you recycle, you take them back and turn them into a circular. So working with companies that are actually doing what you're doing, even with synthetics, then that seems like an okay thing to do. But me personally, I was always feeling like it was okay just to have natural fibers. So I'd always just buy natural fibers. Linen, silk, wool, cashmere, whatever. And I like to just buy, I just do things that I think go back into the environment, they're biodegradable, so that's sort of where I start. But actually, like you said about cotton, only 1% of cotton is organic. So if just buying cotton, how do you have to find out if the cotton is organic. Most cotton is not organic, obviously. So if you could commit to buying organic cotton, that would be a great start. It limits your sources, but if you could go online and see organic cotton. We do organic linen. Silks, I think, are pretty good. They last a long time. But we could talk about the worms. That's another story. Dyes are a problem. It all has its problems. We look at what we call eco-preferred, so try to make things that are made in the best possible way, safer dyes. We go at the chemistry and the dye houses and try, but we're not as far along as we'd like to be in that world. That's where we need partnership, but we can talk more about that. I love linen. It's summertime, so linen is amazing. Linen lasts a really long time. I mean, they wrap mummies in it. So it's really, it has I have linen pieces that are like 20 years old. I wash them and clean them, and you wouldn't know it. It's incredible. And silk can be like that too, except for that silk seems to gravitate toward oil. So it ends up, getting spots on it, but it's still an amazing fabric that it's like diamonds. It's really tough fabric. So I like good quality materials. So I think if you buy things that are good quality, then and that that last, that's a so that you can buy less. I heard that if we wear our clothes twice as long, then we can personally reduce our own carbon footprint by 24%.
Well, first of all, I think this is very helpful, this idea of going for eco-preferred versus eco-perfect. I noticed I relaxed quite a lot when you said that. So in the eco-preferred world, what are the biggest challenges you're currently focused on? Like, this is a challenge where we can make real progress in the X number of years. So we're tackling it. We're going at it.
Well, it's always building new supply chains, because building new supply chains is really expensive. You have very little demand usually. You're testing, fabrics or fibers or whatever. So for us, it's really about building new supply chains that have less of an environmental impact or can be restorative, like regenerative organic cotton or something like that, or hemp, where it's could have a regenerative effect on the planet instead of a degrading effect on the planet. So it's just building those supply chains, because most of them don't exist, or they exist on a very small scale. And I think Eileen and I were talking about this morning. It's like that's where I think collaboration with the rest of the apparel industry is really important, because at the end of the day, we need to shift to these more responsible supply chains, and we need more brands to come on board to do that.
Tell me more what you mean when you say a responsible or an ecologically positive supply chain. I mean, I hear the words and I'm imagining farm, regenerative agriculture, but I don't know if I really know what it means.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're looking at your supply chain and where your fibers come from, is the process that they're using a tremendous amount of water? Is the dye poisoning? Are they, I mean, you have to look at all the aspects of the supply chain and seek to reduce that impact. And sometimes there's innovation that can reduce it altogether. Waterless dyeing technologies and other types of technologies that kind of impact the overall industry. And I think, investing in innovation and investing in supply chains that are better or restorative. I think where we need to start going is regeneration, because we've done so much damage to the planet, to watersheds, to land, that we really need to be focusing on regenerating it. And the Earth is really good at regenerating itself if we create the conditions for it to do that. And so I think that's kind of more where we're looking at, it's not enough to be organic cotton, we have to be regenerative organic cotton, and that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. And, hemp supply chains that are more restorative to the environment. We live in an interconnected world. And the kind of consumption that we're doing now, which is mostly based on, getting the lowest price from the supplier, isn't good for people or the planet. I mean, that's the bottom line. Which is why I think people have a tremendous amount of power to vote with their dollars for the things that matter. And like Eileen said, to buy things that last. And yeah.
Yeah, I think two things I want to say. One is what we're struggling with, but the other is back to that buy things that last and what not to buy, to be extra cautious around anything that's too trendy or anything, and to be careful around fast fashion. Most fast fashion brands do not use organic cotton. They don't use as much quality fibers. They create styles that go out of fashion in a year, and so you don't get that longevity. So be careful around that. It's possible, I suppose, to buy some good things in fashion if you're really discerning in the fast fashion places. So, and one other thing in terms of one of the things that was like currently top of mind for us is that we're struggling with rayon. Because rayon, though it's cellulose, it's wood pulp, it's possible to have it be regenerative. Cellulose is purchased, it's bought in bulk. So when as a manufacturer we buy cellulose to make rayon, it's hard to trace it. And so most of it is not traceable rayon, which means that it could be tearing down the rainforest in Indonesia. So rayon, unless it's sustainably traced, like Tencel is good. There are some, kinds of rayon that are good. What we're struggling with right now is our best-selling material is rayon. So and our customers love it. This is terrible, but I'm wearing it. I'm wearing a jacket that's 8 years old, that's organic cotton, but I'm wearing a rayon jumpsuit that I just love. So this is a weird, this is a weird place to be because, I'm just kind of emphasizing the point. Like, customers are going to freak out if we stop making this fabric. So we've been studying for several years now and actually finding we're getting close to some new solutions that we think are going to make it possible for us to get out of this one fabric. But just being upfront, we're committed to being 100% eco-friendly, which means we're going to have to get out of this fabric by 2020. So, we're getting close. We're at 66%. We were only at, thank you. It's big for us because it's a lot. So we're getting there, and it's a step-by-step thing, and that's why what you were saying about working together. We really appreciate Patagonia. We call them all the time. They have great information for us. We like to think we inspire them every so often, but
you do.
We had fun touring our tiny factory. But we like to we're getting other apparel brands on board because it's a big project, and you help us by buying less and by voting with your wallet and voting for the brands that are trying to do the right thing.
Now, both Eileen Fisher and Patagonia are B Corps, as I mentioned in the introduction. And it's obviously really important to both of you that your organizations are B Corps. Tell us why.
Well, I think for us, it was partly that our founders wanted to enshrine the values of the company into the corporate charter, and it was an actual legal form to do that. And there really wasn't a legal form existent before that. So Yvonne was like the first guy standing in line in California when it became a law. And then for us, I think, we've always sort of been B Corp-like in terms of recognizing that we have a responsibility to more than just shareholders or financial shareholders, but to the environment and to our planet and to people. And so to us, it's a framework for that. It's also a like-minded community of companies, which is the really exciting part about it to me. And I've seen this in the last few years really get a lot of traction. And I think, the current quarterly financial model, public corporation model is killing the planet. I mean, we're not going to grow indefinitely forever. And, nothing happens in a quarter that's meaningful when you're running a business. and letting only the financial shareholders make the decisions about how a company should be run and the impact on people and the planet, I think is a road to hell. And if we stay in that direction, we're not going to have a planet worth living in. And I think the B Corp movement is probably the closest thing we have to changing that narrative and changing the way people think about what a corporation's responsibility is. Milton Friedman was wrong, by the way. He was totally wrong about, the economy. And, we need a new form of capitalism. It doesn't mean there can't be capitalism anymore. Capitalism is awesome.
Yeah.
But it needs to evolve. So.
Yeah. I wonder if how many know what B Corp is? About half and half, okay.
But you could give a very brief introduction.
Quickly, to be a B Corp, you have to meet certain standards. You have to measure your environmental and social impacts, and you have to meet certain criteria in order to be in it. So, and when you're measuring, you're looking at things all the time, and we say measure what matters so that you can keep working on your goals. Like we're saying 66% eco-preferred, and 90-some% organic cotton, things like that, so that we can keep, raising the bar. And that's what we'd like to see other companies join the B Corp movement. But also, I think what Rose is saying we talk about this, about changing the whole business model. And there's some signs of hope in the mainstream corporations because we're starting to see them responding to socially responsible impact investment. We're seeing the ESGs being measured, starting to be measured in a lot of the large companies. They know that there's risk involved with climate change and things of that nature, water use. So there's some interest, and here's another place people can vote with your dollars. At some point, there's an organization called SASB that's now measuring, getting corporations. They're helping corporations to measure their impacts, and so that there will be numbers that'll be possible at some point, I hope, in the not too far future, to when you're investing, to be able to know what the environmental and social number is for the company. And the companies that rank higher in those areas actually end up to be more successful companies. So that's going to be another part of the way we think about investing. So that's one way. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like what B Corp is doing on a more mainstream level. But I also think what you were saying yesterday, if you remember, or maybe this morning, we were talking about the idea that business, if we think bigger about what business is for and the possibilities of business really serving our society in different ways, then we need a new business model. And then maybe it isn't just trying to make the most amount of money, but actually, like what you were saying, Patagonia puts 1% towards innovation. You put 1% toward the planet of your sales. That's if that means instead of making 7% profit, you make 5% or you make less profit, maybe that's really okay, because really, is profit the only measure of success? And so how do we think differently about investing and anyway, this is a different conversation. Right now we're talking about the fashion industry, but it's all related.
And just one further question about the B Corp movement, because I think it's just sort of getting liftoff right now.
Yeah.
And both of you are very instrumental in that. What do you see as its fruition? The B Corp movement was successful. This is what it did. If we were looking ahead and we said, wow, look what the B Corp movement did.
I think it's that customers, citizens prefer to buy things from companies that are B Corps because they know they're taking into consideration something more than just financial gain to the financial shareholder.
Yeah, I would say that also that B Corp changed the model, the basic business model, because they basically have a pretty good model. So if everyone participated in B Corp, that would be changing, that would change the world. B Corp changed the world, that's what I would say.
Okay, so here we are, we're 3 women business leaders, and we're not gonna get out of this session without talking about that. I think it's self-evident and important. What do you think would be different if there were more businesses that had women at the helm? Do you think anything would be different? If so, what would be different?
Yeah, well, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I don't know if anybody was at the session on women investing in women. Actually, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank was there. Did anybody see this? Yeah, okay, so I don't have to totally repeat, but a little bit. He was saying that just from a pure business case, in his personal experience, that women's businesses are actually making more profit long term. And his point about that was that women are more realistic about their goals or something, and they don't stretch as much in terms of their goals, and so they're more likely to meet their goals. But actually what he was saying then is that, and which is where I agree, is that, that it's a little slower approach. It's a little more long-term approach. And I think about my own business as very organic, the way I grew. And so it was never like a wild risk. So, but it was also, I think that women work in more collaborative ways. And I don't think that men can't or don't. I just think the business system was built, that the guys built the business system, and I know we have a lot of guys in the room, but it was built without the women, So it's not that we would do it better, it's just that we would bring the missing piece, which has to do with a little more, kind of, I want to say, whole picture of looking at the people and the planet. And it's not that the men can't do that and don't, but that the system has been so built around profit and making money and, kind of almost like a baseball team. Everyone does their piece, rather than like a family. And it really can't be quite like a family. It's got to be something in between, which is why we need men and women. So it's sort of this, I don't know if I'm explaining this very clearly. I just think it would be more whole, and the priorities would shift. You know how they say in developing countries, if they give money to women, that that the women take care of their communities. They give to their children. They, the community thrives. Sorry, guys, but when they give to the guys take care of themselves, and they may squander the money or something like that, and not necessarily take care of the family and the community. So I think women take care of they take care of the people in the company and in the supply chains, and it's not exclusive to women. It's just the balancing piece would really be different, and I think business and society would thrive and
all right.
be better.
B Corp women. Okay, Rose, what do you think?
I think it's a lot about what Eileen said. I mean, I think my own personal experience is that women CEOs or women colleagues are more likely to collaborate on things. They're less worried about defending their territory, and they're more interested in, like, well, how can we solve these big intractable problems? And what would that look like? And And they're more connected to the idea that we're living in an interconnected world, and you can't, do something over here in a compartment and have it not affect, the air, the water, the soil, the people, the children. I think it's a kind of different worldview, and I think, like Eileen has said, there's a lot of the way that the current structure is set up. That's kind of set up in a one-sided view of, and part of that's just the structure. I really believe in capitalism, and I was a former CFO, and I like making money, and I like profit, and everybody is successful, people get, good jobs, and it's just that, it's not like that's it, and that's a compartment, and you're going to stay in that. I mean, I think we can see. I mean, like I said earlier, if we're using up the resources of 4 planets, like at some point things need to evolve and change. They just have to. And I think women are more tuned into that. I mean, at least anyway, the women that I've talked to about it, so.
Well, Rose, I want to just make sure that I understand, because you said capitalism needs to evolve.
Yeah.
What is that, if you could just say succinctly, the evolutionary move that would be a new kind of capitalism that wouldn't have the injuries that our current system?
Well, I think it's a lack of imagination to think that you can only serve one interest. And right now, that's the way we think. We can only serve the financial shareholder. We must bow down to the financial shareholder, which, of course, you have to serve the financial shareholder. But then there's also the planet, and there's people, and the environment. Is it okay to just serve the financial shareholder and then destroy the planet? It seems just logical to me that you have to open up the way of viewing capitalism to include caring about more things. Just it seems simple. It's just that the whole system is so entrenched in this quarterly earnings report. And I mean, I used to do it. I was a CFO. I mean, I used to fight to get to the EPS number. It's stupid. It's crazy. It's suicidal. It's really suicidal.
Okay. One more question, and then we're gonna.
Am I a bummer? I'm sorry.
Well, no. I mean, if we
exciting.
you're making some really good points, and if we only serve the shareholder, the shareholder won't be here.
Right.
X number of years.
That's right.
We're going to open it up for questions in just a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you one question before we do. In my view, every business, every brand stands for something. It has a voice. Whether people proclaim that or they just let customers look at it and say, that's what I associate with that company. That's what they stand for. I'd love to hear from both of you as the people who are animating these brands from the inside. What, in your view, does Patagonia stand for? What's its voice in the world? And same for Eileen Fisher.
Well, I think it's proof that business can be a force for good in the world. And I think, we've always stood for the protection and conservation of wild places.
Yeah, and I think we stand for simplicity and to timeless, I like to think creative, timeless design, and for women, for helping women to just simply be themselves.
Beautiful. All right, let's open it up. We have microphone runners, so if you're interested in asking a question, yes, the woman in the green here.
Eileen, I was at the session yesterday, and I thought it was excellent. I was disturbed by one comment. Kevin O'Leary was the MC, for those of you who weren't there, and he was excellent. But when it came to current political policy, and since our topic today is about sustainability and doing well and the environment, I forget the question, but it was around conservation and the environment, and he said, listen, my portfolio has never done better. Regulations are off, the market is up,
Tax cuts.
et cetera, et cetera. I'm a happy guy. I thought that was a bit disruptive to the whole tone of the wonderful luncheon discussion. I wonder what you thought.
I agree. That was tough. And I commented in that moment about deregulation and my concern for the environment. How do you square that? How do you do that? Deregulate, and what does it mean? And we were talking about that at breakfast, about what does it mean long term, the kind of deregulation. It's right.
Another,
it's not just about jobs in the moment.
Yeah, in the back there.
Hi, thank you for what you do. You've been talking a lot about how obviously your ethos and ethics are beneficial for the planet, how, as it turns out, it even is beneficial financially. Can you talk a little bit about what you see internally? How does this affect your employees, whether it's commitment, productivity, morale, retention? Just if you could talk a little bit about how that affects your organization internally.
Oh. Yeah, our retention of employees is amazing. I think most people want to work for a brand that they respect, and we got, I don't know how many requests for interns this year, but we only had, I don't know how many spots, but we got something like almost 10,000 requests for people to become interns. And I'm hearing this from all over from other CEOs. You know, it's like when they become a benefit corporation, they all of a sudden have, you know, they have a lot of interest in new workers wanting to work for companies that share their values. So I think that's the new reality, actually.
Yeah, I confirm that too. We have a really good retention rate. We've had employees forever. I mentioned my very first employee still with us. But I think people really want to work for purpose-driven companies where it feels meaningful, like you go to work and it's, you know, and whatever you're doing, if you're building something bigger or better for the world, it just feels, more right. And it doesn't mean it's easy. You know, it's pretty hard work, and we have all kinds of issues around everything we try to do. It's still difficult, but I think the passion around it is very palpable.
Sure.
I work in an alternative high school, and I was fascinated with your recycling of clothes, and there's so many creative students in our school, and I'm thinking about that felting machine.
Yeah.
Is that something that could come into schools, and you know, we could have makers in the schools?
Yes, that would be great. Actually, we're going to do some training, I think, of some students from Parsons, but somebody told me the other day that there are attachments you can get for the sewing machine that felt, so that might be good for the students, you know, as a way to upcycle or to try that process. Yeah, but they have also small little 3-foot machines. You can call someone, I give you a card. Yeah, yeah, really interesting, yeah.
Over here, this gentleman.
Wearing my favorite Patagonia shirt. How do you deal with current kind of retail distribution trends and packaging? Amazon being the best example of the giant box with the layers and layers of packaging to have, you know, the Patagonia fleece in the bottom of it. How are you putting pressure on that to kind of marry with the values of the brand?
Yeah, I mean, we have been struggling with the packaging, especially the packaging that goes over our clothes that we ship, because it goes through a conveyor process to sort, and if you don't have it in a package, then it gets dirty and messed up, and so you have more waste. So it's partly an issue of just finding the right materials. And it's so funny because these are the kinds of things that I feel like if we collaborated on as an industry, we could fix so quickly.
Yes.
You know, because it's really innovation. It's innovating a different kind of packaging, or it's innovating a different kind of processing and machinery. And we've made a lot of strides, but we're not as far along as I'd like to be. You know, we don't actually sell to Amazon, but there are third-party sellers that sell on Amazon, so we get stuck in there. But.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, we struggle also with that, and I know our teams are on it, and I don't know exactly where we are with the packaging or recycled, whatever, how that's working right now. But one of the things that we've struggled a lot with, we sell a lot to department stores, and this is where working together makes a difference, because, you know, they actually deduct costs. If they deduct fees from your payments if you don't ship on plastic hangers, with plastic bags on plastic hangers. So that is something that's built into the industry. And so we have been working and actually shipping flat pack. We've moved to 80% shipping flat pack. I think we only ship jackets and a few things on the hangers so that they don't have to be re-steamed when they get to the store. But we struggle with the department stores on and negotiate those fees because of that, create some extra work on that end. So, but we need better solutions, and there's plastic bags, and I know we've been working on that too. I don't know what the plastic is, whether it's recycled right now, but I know I dropped into a meeting years ago where they were working on that. So I can't speak to the answer, but I know that the teams are working all around, you know. But
Hi, Judy Samuelson with the Business and Society program here at the Institute. My question's about consumers. So your two companies, of course, appeal to consumers like me. I've got money in my pocket. I've got choice. I can go higher end if I choose to. Most of the world of fashion is driven by, it seems to me, consumer desire, which we all share for, you know, price and lower price and convenience. So what are you thinking, I guess, today about a consumer? Does a consumer lead you? Are you leading the consumer? And what do you think about your peers who are serving more of a mass market?
oh, we try not to put anybody down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we've found just through our own research is that kind of millennial and younger are actually willing to pay more for something that they feel is a lower environmental footprint. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that they have a lot more information at their fingertips than we did. And they understand the issues that are happening right now, and you know, they believe in the climate crisis that's going on, and you know, they're just, I think they're more conscious consumers actually. But you know, we have our worn wear programs. We have different ways for people to enter into the brand. Even you know, the reality is, if you buy a $2 T-shirt, it's likely that that person who made it, that labor was exploited, you know, that the dye poisoned the local river. You know, there are impacts to buying cheap. There are external impacts to it. And, you know, it's a quality thing, I mean, and a longevity thing. And what I would hope is that people sort of start to change their patterns of consumption and start to keep things longer, care for them better.
And maybe this is where we can partner more, because education around, you know, to the customer, to help the customer understand that if she keeps things longer, if she buys more thoughtfully and carefully and things that last, if she looks at how much she's going to spend on clothing, if she tracks it and how much did she spend in a year, she could actually buy a few quality things, even if she doesn't spend a lot of money on clothing. And one other thing that we have noticed is that we do get younger customers in our recycled clothing because it is cheaper, and because our clothes have a timelessness. If you're savvy, you can find old things that look like the new things. It's pretty amazing. And the other thing is where we find the younger customer that is more price conscious and has to be, we find that she buys our most simple system pieces. They're selling, it's the one place we seem to be reaching this younger customer. So, you know, she understands the value, the ones that do, and some do more than others. So education, but it would be great to have more education programs around buying less, buying better, keeping your clothes longer, how you can personally reduce your carbon footprint.
We have one final question from the audience.
I can't possibly say all the things I would like to say to you. It's such an honor. Our parallels are remarkable. I have things from your very first collection.
Sweet.
I was in the business for years. You took me back and forth to Japan a million times in a little easy
I was inspired there.
So I don't even want to start, but thank you so much for everything you've done. And I think regarding this women thing, I think that balance and integrity at the helm, this is a perfect illustration of what that creates. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think that's a beautiful
What a
note
nice wrap-up.
to end on with our gratitude. I think all of our gratitude for both of you. Within the Buddhist tradition that I've been trained, they talk about something called the Bodhisattva ideal. It's the person who puts themselves out for the benefit of all beings. And you two, in my view, really embody that. And it's a great joy to be with you. So thank you.